Hello there, and thank you for tuning in to another edition of Tips Time with Josh Klein. This is actually a bit of a late tip in the week that I'm releasing. So I hope everyone's had a good week and everyone's been productive in their music sessions. But essentially, this is my channel where I speak about being efficient with your producing sessions, the mindset that I've found in my experience so far helps with producing tracks, finishing your tracks, things of that nature. This is actually the start of a three-part tip that I am going to be doing 3 weeks, like 3 consecutive videos on. And it's about starting off small when you are starting in music production. And this weekly tip, this part of it is going to be about synthesizers and frequency synthesis. So we'll just open up a digital audio workstation here. I have a bunch of MIDI clips here because I have different synthesizers on them. And before I start to give the impression that I'm going to dive into each of these synthesizers, I'm going to cut it off right there and tell you that if you're going to be starting off in producing, you're actually quite wise to not do that. Don't grab a handful of synthesizers or even a handful of different plugins. Obviously have one plug, have all of the fundamental plugins that you're going to need, and you don't need to look anything further than what comes in the stock version for your digital audio workstation. So obviously have the plugins that take care of all the fundamentals that you need to produce a song. But you don't need 5 different compressors. You don't need 5 different, 5 different synthesizers. You don't need 5 different saturators or what have you, right? That's what I'm kind of getting at here. In particular, starting off small, and what I mean by that is starting off with some of the most basic portions, basic versions of a synthesizer. There's lots of different types of synthesis, but they all do the same thing. They're all based on synthesis, which is creating sounds. So how we make those sounds, that is determined by the type of synthesizer you use. So it could be a wavetable synthesizer. It could be an FM synthesizer. It could be an analog synthesizer. Hardware, software, whatever. But the point is, when I first started, I was overwhelmed with lots of different synthesizers to try, and all of them are based on the same principle, but some look a lot more complicated than others. Some of them are a lot more extravagant. A lot are more aesthetically pleasing. That's another big thing about plugins is you have to, it's as with a lot of things in life, when you grow up and you start to see and look around, everything is in a sense especially when it comes to products you're making, everything's a business, everything's based on marketing. So these plugins, all these audio equipment and what have you, they're made in a very aesthetically pleasing way. Some of the best looking synthesizers aren't the best. They might look the best, but some of the best synthesizers are actually quite basic. Some of the best synthesizers for starting off are the most fundamental ones. So the type of synthesizer I'm talking about is an FM synthesizer, which stands for frequency modulation. And what that means is really where you're getting the frequency from, how you are creating that waveform that is giving you the sound. You're using frequency modulators, or in other words, modulator knobs. So we could look at something like you look at some of these other synthesizers like the SynthEV. Obviously there's a lot here, there's a lot going on here. It can be a bit overwhelming. Some of the most well-known ones, you could look at Serum. That's a good synthesizer as well, and I'm not putting any of these synthesizers down. They're great synthesizers and they all have their different strengths and weaknesses. But what I would say is when you're starting off is to start off with something a little more basic. So we're going to go to good old reliable operator. It's nothing flashy. It's an FM synthesizer, like I said. And it's very basic. I mean, look at this. It's not even that big. It's not complicated. And you nail down all the fundamentals of what you need to learn about synthesizers, sound design on this. So you have your 4 oscillators here. You and you basically the good thing about this is it's very basic. So you start off with each oscillator, obviously, and you activate them, and you can do you can make a sound very easily with this, and it starts with just knowing the different chords, like the pitch you want, the frequency you want to be sending out of that oscillator, and then from there, here I'll actually make sure my MIDI is on. I don't know if I can even hear that. That's because I'm soloing the wrong channel. There we are. Okay, so we have a nice little sine wave, then you can start to bring in other ones. And let's make this actually a square, because squares are great. And we'll add a little bit of so you could really start to shape each oscillator. Obviously, I don't want to go too far into it, but you kind of can get the point when you see that these oscillators, it's just very easy to pick up and start just fooling around with it and start picking up the basic concepts of shaping the sound, designing it. I'm not doing anything special here, but once you do that and you kind of build a bit of a process with it with an FM synthesizer as basic as operator, and you nail down the fundamentals like shaping the sound, the ADSR, you start to nail down, the filter, using a low frequency oscillator as well, which it has, and starting off basic like that. And I also would just say to, I think I spoke about it and I recommended it in a previous video, but what I highly recommend is whenever you find a synthesizer that you like, a way to integrate it into your tracks and your production. I mean, you could just have like sound design sessions where you're just working away at this, but it will take a while, and it's I find it's more motivating to grow in my sound design when it's for a track. So when I'm working on a track and I want to try and make a sound, I will first see if I can find maybe a actually, I like the pads that they have on here, so we'll check out a pad. I will check out some of the sounds that are presets, and then start to look at different ones. The ones I've chosen so far aren't like my favorites. I just kind of picked random ones, but you can pick obviously a preset that you really like and then modulate it more, tweak it to your taste, and really get a sense of how it all works. The main point of this is that FM synthesizers, like operator, they're a lot more basic, they're a lot easier to really get a grasp of, and I highly recommend starting off with these ones before going into the more complex synthesizers such as Serum, or just because it's just better to start off basic and learn the fundamentals. And you don't really need anything fancy to make great sound designs. A very well-known producer and DJ, Recondite, he uses, I'm pretty sure one of the main synthesizers, if not the only synthesizer he uses, is Operator. So, and listen to a song by Recondite and you will see how advanced his sound design is and the crazy sounds that he has in his tracks. So there's no shortage of space for creativity and possibilities, and even the most basic of synthesizers. It's really just about mastering it. I'd be the first to say that I'm nothing close to being even like I would say like advanced in my use of operator, but I'm growing, each and every day in it. Every time I open it up and I start to make a sound, or I try to emulate maybe a preset that I've heard, that's just another step in that direction. So I highly recommend to start off small with your synthesizers. Don't go too advanced, don't overwhelm yourself. Stick with the basics, learn those fundamentals of the synthesizer, and then grow from there. But I hope you enjoyed the tip. Let me know what you think. Obviously, if you were maybe someone that was a newer producer and you started off with a different synthesizer that you felt was really important for your growth, I would love to hear about it. Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe, and I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great weekend.